Napkins and serviettes, fries and chips, robots and traffic lights, and a trunk and a boot. Different cultures use different words for everyday items. My cultural heritage did not only affect the holidays that I celebrate and the food that I eat, but also my communication style as a whole. Being born in South Africa and moving to the United States at age 11, my cultural heritage has played a huge role throughout my life. Unlike the majority of people, I emigrated from another country with its own customs and traditions. The first major difference that I noticed when moving to the US was the types of holidays that are celebrated along with how they are celebrated. Although both cultures celebrate holidays like Christmas and Easter and Halloween, they're celebrated very differently. Oral traditions have been passed on to create the holiday of Thanksgiving in the US. Obviously, this is a United States tradition, and I have therefore never experienced an American Thanksgiving dinner. Holidays in the United States are a lot more extravagant. The 4th of July, for example, is a huge holiday in the United States today to celebrate the country's independence. In South Africa, most people are not even aware of the country's Independence Day, and it's therefore not celebrated at all. South Africans celebrate Easter as a religious holiday, but most people have never heard of the Easter Bunny and definitely don't receive presents or go on Easter egg hunts. People are aware of when Halloween is, but no one ever goes out to trick or treat. In general, a lot more emphasis is placed on holidays in the US than in the culture that I'm used to. Cuisine is a second aspect of my cultural heritage that is different than the American culture. Portions of food in general are a lot smaller in my culture. Although I definitely love American food, I still have my favorite when it comes to South African cuisine. Bovril is a meat and vegetable extract that's a type of spread that can be used on bread and crackers. It's definitely one of my favorites, although most of my friends make faces when looking at it. Let's see. This is what Bovril looks like. If you look inside of it, you see that it's completely black. So I promise it's a lot better than it looks. My dad often goes back to South Africa for work, and when he comes back, he brings my favorite childhood candies and chocolate, and it's like having a second Christmas. Most meals in South Africa are cooked on the grill. Barbecuing is used as more than a way just to cook food. It's a way to bring family and friends together. Finally, the aspect of culture that has affected my life the most is the difference in the communication styles between the two cultures. I found that Americans often don't respond or give someone any feedback during a conversation. In South Africa, this would be considered extremely rude. This is something that I'm still adjusting to today. It's just strange to me when I'm talking to someone and I don't get a response out of them, even if I didn't ask them a direct question. There are also differences in physical communication relating to personal space. It is not abnormal at all for relatives or close friends to kiss when greeting one another. The American culture is completely different from this, and the closest that people with strong interpersonal relationship get would be like a hug or a handshake, depending on the gender of the two people. When thinking about this, I'm personally more comfortable with the American form of greeting. People in the U.S. seem to have more easily have those TMI conversations, and I find this really interesting since South Africans seem to have closer interpersonal relationships and greetings. Talking on the phone is another form of communication that's completely different between the two cultures. In South Africa, you're taught from a young age that the correct way to answer a phone is to identify yourself first, so that the other person know who they're talking to. This applies even when answering your own cell phone. Americans answer the phone by simply saying hello and then leaving it up to the caller to identify themselves and ask if they're speaking to the right person. When communicating over the phone, I usually still use the South African way of calling when on my house phone, but when I'm on my cell phone, I would just say hello. When immigrating to the US, the communication characteristic that I had to adapt to the most was the language barrier. All of a sudden, a serviette was called a napkin, a shopping trolley was called a cart, and tomato sauce was called ketchup. Different words were used for everyday, ordinary things, and it really took me a while to adapt. There's still times today where I find myself slipping up and calling a traffic light a robot and finding myself being stared at by everyone around me. It's apparent to me that my culture has impacted my life drastically. Means of celebrating holidays, types of cuisine, and communication styles are the characteristics that have affected me the most personally. What is interesting to me is that I've adapted to many aspects of the American culture while still holding on to my own cultural heritage. It's been really important to me to learn from my new culture while still holding on to my past.